Personally, I had quite a challenging childhood and also adolescence. And I think that because I had quite a traumatic childhood and adolescence at a very young age, it kind of forced me to look at myself, to understand who I was and to understand how I fit in or don't fit in, which is also entirely fine. And actually, in so many ways, I think that, not fitting in can actually be a strength because it could mean that you look at life from a different perspective, you have something different to offer, and sharing that confidently can be incredibly powerful. And I think that, I think if we can look at these moments of rejection as moments of growth, of redirection, as deeper understanding, and now just as I'm talking, there's a memory that's coming back to me. So, how old was I? I think I must have been 21 or 22 years old, and I was at the time I was studying in England, and I was applying for a summer internship at this media agency. And I remember at the time when I got the news that I didn't get it, I started like bawling, I started crying in my bed because I really didn't want to go home to Norway that summer and spend like 3 months living at my sister's house. I didn't want to do that. But looking at it now, 13 years later, that was obviously a part of the plan. I wasn't meant to get that job. Otherwise, I wouldn't be who I am today. It would have taken me on a different path. And what is the opposite of rejection? The opposite of rejection is acceptance. And I think that that is sometimes something that we can do is that we can take a feeling, an experience, a sensation. Of course, rejection has a level of density to it, has an dense energy to it, right? Whilst acceptance, on the other hand, is light, it is opening, it expanses. And I think that sometimes by flipping that energy and bringing that energy of acceptance within us and then doing what we did towards the end, which is to breathe in that energy of acceptance and allow that to become a part of our being, I think that's one lovely way to start that journey of letting go and moving on. How I work with rejection is that I have built in my mind what I call a rejection policy. That is not to say that it always works, and it's also not to say that it's always easy, but in my excuse me, in my rejection policy, in my rejection policy, it says that was not for me. Rejection is redirection. Every time something that I really wanted doesn't go my way, I flip on that policy every time. I think, in so many ways, why this policy works is, of course, because I think naturally I have a very positive temperament. I have a very positive mindset. Like every time I get pushed down, I sort of step back up again. But this is also something, I have cultivated. So the ways in which I have cultivated it is that I have created this rejection policy within my mind. Of course, what really helps with, for me, crystallizing that rejection is a part of the plan is that that is also a part of my spiritual philosophy in a way, in a sense of that I believe everything is guided, everything is supported. Even when we go through a struggle, that is a part of our experience as human beings in the earthly realm. That is a part of our learning, and that is a part of sort of the broader sort of philosophical understanding that I have of my own life that of course won't work equally well for everybody. People have different ideas and different feelings about these things, but that of course also weaves into that experience. I think what's really challenging with modern society is that we also have so much to compare ourselves to, right? We compare ourselves to people all the time, and we think to ourselves, why do they get to have something when I don't? And I think that's also part of what makes it sometimes difficult to feel that rejection is a part of the plan. But I think that, and this is going to, I suppose, sound somewhat spiritually trite, is that if we can always bring it back to presence, if we can always bring it back to this moment in our life without necessarily comparing ourselves to others, I think that's also a great way to navigate that challenge of that rejection is a part of the plan. The most important thing when it comes to moving on and letting go from any experience is awareness, right? We have to create awareness around it. And once we have created awareness around it, we can move on. We can let it go, and we can try to embody within ourselves to understand that this was a part of the plan. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop trying something else, but this was a part of the plan. How emotions are made, and the key takeaway from me from that book, it's this thing which I think is called emotional granularity, which is precisely what we were doing today, right? Because rejection is not very granular, whilst underneath that there'll be a feeling, and maybe even beneath that there's another feeling. And the more granular you can get with your feelings, and the better you become at labeling it, the easier it becomes to understand it. And through that understanding, you can shift it, you can move on, you can let it go, because you get it. It's not this sort of ethereal thing which doesn't make sense to you, right? So it's about becoming granular with your emotional literacy of yourself. And it's from this book, which is called How Emotions Are Made. Certain parts of it is quite technical and sciencey, but I really enjoyed it.